Hey there friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melanie and you're watching akaMommy. And in today's video, I wanted to answer some questions that you guys had for me regarding my recent mission trip to Uganda. A couple of weeks ago, I put out a call for questions on my Facebook account and my Instagram, and you guys did not disappoint. You asked some amazing questions. I'm gonna try to keep it brief, but I could probably talk about this trip for hours and hours. So I'm gonna stick to the questions that you guys asked specifically, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. So the first question is from Tammy. She says, what made you decide to go on the mission trip? And also, how did Kyler handle you being gone so far away? So, I'm probably going to overlap some questions, but I'm just going to tell you guys what made me go, or what made me decide to go on this mission trip, honestly, was just a very strong prompting from the Holy Spirit. I went to the women's conference at our church in the fall of 2017, and up to that point, I had never been on a mission trip of any kind. I have, my church regularly goes on mission trips to Mexico, but I had never participated in one of those. And while I was at the women's conference, my best friend, who was leading the conference, got up and spoke to everyone about her recent trip to Uganda. She had just returned from Uganda about a year before our conference, and she got up and was just telling us about the trip. And she made the announcement during the conference that she was going to be taking a group of women in July of 2018. And to be really honest with you, it was a complete shock to me at the time, but I just really strongly in that moment felt the Holy Spirit say to me, Melanie, you are meant to go on that trip. My initial response was, yeah, I don't think so, because I've never even been on a close to home mission trip. Going 8,000 miles away was a bit terrifying. Up until this point, I had never been called to go on a trip of any kind. So for this to be my first one ever was a little bit scary. Now, Kyler has never been away from me for this length of time before. The longest I think she's ever been away from me is maybe a couple of nights when I had to go out of town for something, or maybe she was with my parents, but she's never been away from me for this long. So for me to be gone for 12 days was definitely not super easy for her. The first couple nights that I was gone and I would actually get a chance to talk to them, she kept wanting to know, when are you coming home? Are you coming home today? And it was really hard. It was hard for her. It was really hard for me. But eventually she got more adjusted to the fact, and she kind of understood a little bit more. Mommy's gone on her long trip. I told you I would be gone a long time, and I'm far away, but I will be coming home really soon. So overall, I'd say she did great. I think that she handled it really, really well. She just didn't understand. You know, she'd never been away from me for that long. She didn't understand what it was going to be like. So overall, I think she did really well. It was probably harder on me than it was on her. Okay, so Deanne asks, how did the trip change me personally? Or is there anything that I learned about myself during this trip that I didn't already know? Oh man, how did this trip not change me? To be really honest with you, it opened my eyes to a completely different culture. As I mentioned, I'd never really been anywhere else. I've been to Mexico one time on my honeymoon, and other than that, I've traveled around the United States a little bit throughout my life, but I had never experienced another culture the way that you do when you go on a mission trip and you are really embedded into that culture. It was amazing. It was absolutely just life-changing. It changed me in ways that I can't even put into words. You guys know, if you've been following my channel recently, that it definitely made me more aware of the amount of food and money that we as Americans tend to waste. And so that is one area. It feels really small, but that is one area that I was really changed in, and I have actually made changes since coming home. I will also say that this trip really showed me more how I want to be minimalistic. The Ugandan people, they may not have a lot, but they are so incredibly grateful for what they do have. They don't feel the need to have more. They acquire what they actually need and not a lot extra. And they're so happy. They're so content. And that really spoke volumes to me. It just made me really want to come home and look even further at my spending habits and why do I purchase certain things, and is this a purchase that I'm making because it's something we need or because I'm feeling discontent with something in my life. I will say that the Ugandan people definitely taught me what it looks like to be content with what you have, and not just content as in you're okay with it, but content as in you see everything that you have as a blessing and you're grateful for it. And I definitely feel like since coming home, I have developed more of that mindset, which I could not be happier about. I will also say one thing that I sort of understood about myself before leaving, but it was definitely made very clear to me while on the trip, is that I am what you might call an extroverted introvert. Basically meaning I'm perfectly fine being in crowds and being around people. I enjoy spending time with people. I enjoy having fun and laughing, and I don't have a lot of social anxiety when it comes to that. However, being in crowds, whether it's hundreds of people or 6 people, it really takes its toll on me. It wears me out. I am an introvert in the sense that in order to recharge, I have to have time alone. So when we went on this trip, there were 9 of us on this trip, and there were lots of times that we were with big groups of people, and then there were times that it was just us, but regardless, 9 people, 10 including our driver, is a lot. And so towards the end of the trip, I really kind of started to hone in on the fact that even when I was with a lot of people, sometimes I just needed to put in my headphones and listen to music and just kind of like be in my own space, because on this trip there really wasn't any time that we were completely alone. And so that in the beginning was really difficult for me, and I just was like, I need some time to just be and to be quiet. And I don't, like, here at home there are 7 people who live in this house, and so it's not uncommon for me to be surrounded by people. But every single night before I go to bed, I try very hard to have some quiet time where I can maybe have some tea and read a little bit and just literally just have quiet. And it's also really important to me to get up early in the morning and have that quiet time as well, because it helps to set me up for the rest of the day. So I kind of knew that about myself, but going on this trip definitely laid it all out for me and made it even more clear in my mind. So now I kind of know in what situations I thrive and in what situations I tend to get a little bit overwhelmed. So Rachel from Day to Day Joys asks, what made you pick Uganda? What were your first thoughts when you stepped outside leaving the airport, and what did God teach you? So I'll first say what made me choose Uganda is simply that is the mission trip that was planned, and that is where I felt God called me. I did not necessarily choose Uganda. I really felt like God chose me to go on this trip. What were my first thoughts when I left the airport? It was late at night when we landed in Uganda. I couldn't see anything, and we went and we stayed at the guest house. I will say the next morning when we woke up and I was able to get a good look at everything around us, I was absolutely blown away with how beautiful it was. I will say that when I heard that I was going to Africa, I expected to be, you know, basically in the desert. It's kind of what you think of when you think of Africa if you've never been there. And what I woke up to instead was lush greenery, rolling hills, semi-mountains, and it was so astoundingly beautiful. I did not expect that at all, and it was such a treasure. I will say God taught me a lot of things on this trip. I've already mentioned a few of them, but I really believe that God wanted to use this trip to help me learn how to be a voice and learn how to be an ambassador for some of the missionaries that are over there in some of the different ministries. And to be honest with you, I've been back now for about a month and a half. And I'm still learning things. God is still using that trip to show me different things about myself. And I have been told, and I've read in books, that even years after you go on a mission trip, God will still be using that trip to teach you things. And I cannot wait for him to reveal to me the different things that he has for me. Okay, so the next question is from, I believe it's Elva, but I may have that totally wrong, and if I do, I'm so sorry. She asks, how do you find an agency to do mission trips with, and how do you pick where to go? How do you pay for it? So as I mentioned, I didn't necessarily pick those details about this trip, but I do know since going that there are ministries in countries that will actually help you to find an agency if you would like to go to a specific ministry. The agency that we worked through was Go Be Love International, and I will leave a link for their website below this video if you guys are interested. They organize trips to multiple different countries. They have lots of different trips that they organize for you if you are interested in going. You don't have to set anything up. If you really just would like to go and you have a place in mind, they more than likely will have a team that is going there, or you can be the beginning of a team that's going to go there. But they were absolutely phenomenal to work with. I mean, the communication from them was just spot on. They were there to answer all of our questions. They made sure while we were in country that everything was going smoothly. And honestly, our trip coordinator from Go Be Love, I'm now friends with on Facebook. So they really take an interest in you as a person, and they want to make sure that they are there for you along the entire process. How I paid for my trip, in complete honesty, I did not pay anything for my trip. You do fundraising, in which family members, friends, or anyone else who would like to can help fund your trip. So I basically did fundraising for my entire trip. There was one or two women, there might have been 2 women who went on our trip who actually did personally fund their own trips, but everyone else did fundraising where we were able to raise the money for our trips. I will tell you that my trip was estimated to cost $3,500. That was our original estimate. That was our fundraising goal. And I think by the end of it, by the time it was all said and done, it cost nearly that much for us to go. So I did fundraising. I didn't pay for my trip. That was actually a really big fear of mine. As soon as I decided that I wanted to go on this trip and I felt called to go on this trip, I was like, okay, how am I going to pay for this? Even with fundraising, I was afraid. I was afraid that the funds wouldn't be there, and my husband and I decided in the beginning that we would do our best with the fundraising, but if for some reason I did not have all of my funds raised by the time I needed to have them, that we would fill in the gaps and we would do the best that we could to make it work. But because I felt very strongly that God called me to go on this trip, it required a huge amount of trust for me to also believe that he would make it possible. And he did. He provided everything every step of the way. All right, guys, sorry, I had to change my camera battery, so if the angle has changed or the lighting, I apologize. Let me go ahead and pick back up. So Lauren asks, was this your first international mission trip? Yes, this was my first mission trip of any kind. What did you find the hardest about adjusting to life in Uganda? Honestly, the time difference was a little bit difficult to adjust to the first few days. They are actually 8 hours ahead of us, and so we kind of lost a day whenever we traveled there. That was a little bit difficult at first, but not terribly bad. To be honest, I didn't really find anything super difficult it was such an easy transition. I mean, the organization that sent us and then everyone involved along the way was just really so good about making things as smooth for us as possible. I don't really know. I'm not sure that I know how to answer that one. What was your favorite part of the trip? Oh man, that is a really hard one. There are so many things, so many memories that I have and so many things that I loved. I will say that one of my favorite parts of the trip was basically really getting to talk to the people who live in Uganda and live in Jinja more specifically, which is where we visited, and just talking to them about their lives and about their history and their beliefs and their customs. That was so incredibly fascinating to me. Our poor driver, I cannot even tell you how many questions that I asked that poor man. Oh, and he was so gracious to answer all of them for us. Oh, Simon, love you. So yeah, that was my favorite part, was honestly just learning about the culture from the people who actually live there. Do you plan to go back? Yes, absolutely. I cannot wait to go back. If I could afford to go back every single summer, I would, but my plan is to go back every 2 years. How did God change your heart after going there? I think I've kind of answered that one. I think I've touched on that one. Her husband is going to Uganda and she can't wait to see how God is going to work in his life. It's going to be amazing. It's just, if he's never been there before, it's going to be absolutely amazing. What a blessing. Congratulations to you guys that he is going to get to experience that. I honestly can't think about or talk about Uganda without a huge smile on my face, because it was that just absolutely life-changing for me. Okay, so the last question that I have for you guys, and honestly the one that really made me giggle when I read it, is from Simon. Now, Simon was our driver when we were in Uganda, and can I just tell you, I love that man. He has just become such a true brother in Christ to me. He says, when you hear about Uganda, what comes to your mind first? And honestly, I really had to struggle. Like, I struggled to come up with this answer because there's so many things. There's just so much to take in when you go. But I think what comes to my mind when I first think about Uganda is just the people and the kindness that they have in their hearts and just the love that they show to everyone. I mean, I know that there are places in Africa that are not safe to be, where there's a lot of war and trouble and turmoil. There are places like that all over the world, to be honest with you, even in the United States. But where we went, where we had the privilege of being, the people were gentle, they were kind, they were gracious, they were selfless, and I can't tell you how amazing that was to me. I have never met a more loving, set of people in my entire life, and it truly made such an impact on me that I want to hold with me. I want to pass on to my children. I am actually planning on taking my children with me when I go back to Uganda. My oldest daughter is now 16, and when I go back next time, she will be turning 18, and I'm planning on taking her with me and helping her to experience this as well. And then each one of my kids subsequently, as they turn 18 or around that age, I want to take them over there with me. There's no age limit. You don't have to be 18 in order to travel over there. That's just kind of in my mind, the age that I would hope for them to be, so that they were mature enough to be able to handle the travel and just the experience, because God is going to lay so much on their hearts while they're there. I really need them to kind of be mature enough to be able to process through all of that. But yeah, I mean, it was just such an amazing trip, and honestly, what first comes to my mind when I think about Uganda is the people and just their smiles. And you go, everywhere you go, people welcome you and they say, you are welcome here. And it's just amazing. It's so amazing. We never felt judged while we were there. We never felt like the outsiders. We were welcomed in everywhere we went, and that was so phenomenal. I am so incredibly grateful for everyone who helped coordinate the trip. All of my sisters that went with me on the trip. Our driver Simon was so phenomenal. That poor man, I said I asked him lots of questions, and I absolutely did, but he was so wonderful. He said, ask me all of your questions, ask me anything, and he answered all of my questions, all of our questions, because we all had a lot of questions. We wanted to know everything about the culture and the people while we were there. So it was just an amazing trip, and I cannot wait to go back. So thank you so much, you guys, for all of you that sent in questions and allowed me the chance to sit here and talk about one of my favorite places on earth now. I don't want to get emotional talking about it, but the people, the country, the culture, everything, it's just absolutely has such a special place in my heart, and I love talking about it. So thank you for allowing me the chance to do that. I hope that you guys have enjoyed hearing a little bit more about my trip. I am happy to answer any other questions that you have. I did have one request to share tips for maybe before you're going to be going on a trip, maybe some things that I didn't think of ahead of time before I went and now I wish that I had done differently. I will share all of those in a video with you guys coming up soon, but I didn't really feel like it fit perfectly with this topic. So again, thank you guys so much. I hope that you have enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye guys.